Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we have a very special guest, someone who has more than 20 publications on her record. And today she's here with us to tell you all about review articles. So welcome, Dr. Ishita.
Thank you so much, Ajay, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to
Yeah,
be here.
very excited to have you, Dr. Ishita.
Thank you.
So tell me about how did you get into research?
Okay, sure. I was doing research since med school back in India for a long time, and I've always been interested there. But the COVID-19 pandemic opened a lot of opportunities for all of us. It was like Pandora's box opening. There was so many opportunities for research. There was so many opportunities to. There were so many potential topics that you could think of to do research on, and so I think that's what got me further into the topic. So that's how, yes.
Okay. So there are many questions that students ask me, and one of the most common one is, what are review articles? So could you
Yeah.
share something about that?
Sure, of course. I do have a lot of, I have basically done a lot of review articles, much more as compared to other types. Review articles are a type of research. There are lots of types of review articles as well. So these are articles that basically summarize what is already available on the in the field of academia and make your own paper. It's like reviewing whatever literature is available online or in libraries, and sort of understanding what they have to say, and then formulating a your manuscript and going ahead. So there are a lot of types of research. Some qualify as original research, some don't. So a literature review basically is what I just said. So you look at a few articles, and then you sort of form a summary, and you publish it. So these are very difficult for junior researchers or people not very known in the fields to publish. Literature reviews are usually something that researchers who are quite famous in the field too. So they are sort of invited by the journal or by the publishing house to write a literature review, so that there's kind of a summary of all the available material. Another type of review is a systematic review, which I know have been really common in this pandemic situation. So now that is a much more defined review. When I say that, I mean you are sort of looking at everything available on the internet on your topic. So a potential subject that you've chosen for your research, you set up criteria, you set up your methodology, and whatever is available in libraries or whatever you can find is what you have to go through and include in your systematic review. So that is basically looking at two or more platforms, two or more libraries, looking at lots and lots of different records, lots and lots of different original research, and then formulating yours. So that's much more extensive, so to say. And it's sort of, and when you call a paper a systematic review, it sort of tells people, or it sort of tells academicians or the journal that you've looked at everything available on that subject. So that's systematic review. Sometimes you can take that a notch further when you include biostatistics in that. So when we try to compare two quantities, when we try to involve high-end biostatistics, that becomes a meta-analysis. So every meta-analysis is preceded by a systematic review. So these are kind of review articles. They are basically looking at whatever literature is already there, looking at articles that are already there in libraries, and forming your own research. So again, going through all of
Wow.
that again and forming a summary. So that's what it is. Yes.
Wow. So is there any minimum number of articles that we need to look at to write such reviews?
That's a good question. So I would say no and yes. So when one's doing a literature review, that depends on the author themselves. So if one's been invited by a journal, or if you're just doing a literature review, it is totally dependent on you. You could look at a few articles, understand what's available. Some authors would like to dig in deeper, so that's totally upon the author. There is not a minimum number that you need to look at. But for systematic reviews, as I said, it involves looking at every record that's available online, I would say available in the field. So that could be 100, that could be 1,000, that could even be just 10 or 12 or 15. But looking at every record, every article that fulfills your inclusion criteria, that fulfills what you want to include. So it's that, everything. So it could be any number, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200. So that, yeah. So yes and no to answer your question shortly.
Okay. So how does biostatistics play a role in review articles? Do you need biostats or numbers in every such article?
Okay, so again, in a literature review, it's summarizing. So it's more of and obviously when there are lots of records available, you look at only some, you're just forming a summary. So there isn't high-end biostatistics involved there. So that does not really involve numbers. It's just summarizing words. Even in systematic reviews, there's usually minimal biostatistics involved. Again, we're not going into things like odds ratio or relative risks or things like that. We're just forming a narrative synthesis kind of thing. So whatever we found, we explain that in detail. Sometimes others do use a few simple math calculations. We're looking at, so these were the records that we saw. In all of these, we had these many patients. So just simple additions or simple male to female ratio, not very complicated biostatistics. But when we talk about meta-analysis is using biostatistics on a systematic review article. So meta-analysis do use, many times you compare to quantities, things like that. So that's when biostatistics are involved. That's when things get complicated. You need softwares, you need the right knowledge, you need a biostatistician on board. So yeah, you need biostatistics for the meta-analysis, not the other two.
Oh, okay. So leaving out meta-analysis, what is the basic outline of the process of a systematic review?
Okay. Okay. So once you have a potential, your topic set, once you know what you want to research on, you start drafting an outline. Once you have your authors on board, you start drafting an outline. So that includes what would you like to include. So giving an example, if I want to find out about the efficacy of, let's say, steroids in COVID-19, so I would set up an inclusion criteria that I would only include adult patients. I would be only including patients that have no comorbidities, or patients who are not pregnant, or vice versa. So I'd set up an inclusion criteria, I'd set up exclusion criteria. Inclusions would also include things like, I'd only include peer-reviewed articles, I'd only include articles that are open access or full texts that are available, not conference papers, or articles that are only in English, things like that. So when you set up all of these criteria, it becomes very easy for you to do the review. So you go to different libraries, either get a help of a librarian. So right now, given the current situation, everything is so online. So we just go online, go to different platforms, go to different libraries, go to like PubMed or SciDirect. There's so many available. We go over there and we find, put in our keywords, and scan through the records that are available and see if they fit into our, so we need to look at every record. So that's what a systematic review is. And then sort of see if they fulfill our inclusion criteria or not, and then keep on including them. So that's how we'll keep narrowing the search. Finally, you'd get your own set of record, you'd get your own set of short library that includes articles that fulfill your inclusion criteria. So, and then we'd go into that. So that's what the review process is. And then we'd go into extracting data or understanding what's there in these papers. So that we can write our paper. So we'd go into the process of data extraction. So we'll go into each, we'll set up headings that we want to extract data under, and we'll go and form a big table that includes every record, and we'll extract data. For example, if I find out lots and lots of case reports on or case series on, let's say, the use of corticosteroids in COVID-19, I will be finding out the number of patients, probably number of males and females, hospital stay, the dose given, things like that. And I'll get a large table, right? And that's what my results are. And then you can form, if it's a systematic review, you can form a summary of that table. You can write it down, use some basic additions or ratios. And there you go. Voila, you have your paper. You can formulate your manuscript. So that's
amazing. So once you have formulated the systematic review, how difficult it is to publish it in a journal, and do you need to pay journals? Are there any good journals that are free? How do you go about publishing it?
right. So literature reviews are again something that usually are come by invitation from journals of a publishing house to authors. So when you're being invited to send in an article, obviously they publish it. Cost depends on the journals differently. For a systematic review, many journals do consider a systematic review as an original article. Many don't. Many are in the gray area. I know that meta-analysis most of the times are considered original articles. So, but systematic reviews sometimes are not. They're usually 50-50. So getting those published depends on a lot of things. As any research article, the process is very similar. You reach out to journals. Many journals do consider systematic reviews. Many times they would have certain restrictions as to the number of references you can use, as to the permissions that you can use. So that depends again on journal to journal. But yes, given, and especially with the current scenario, I know for a fact that all through last year, COVID-19 articles were just being picked up by journals. It was relatively easy to publish COVID-19 articles. So of course that plays a major factor as well. So yeah, systematic reviews would be picked up by journals depending on the need and depending on if you fulfill the aim and the scope of the journal. So it's very similar to any other research article getting published. About the cost, that depends if it's an open access journal, if it's not. Again, just like anything else. This past year, if you've done a very good review, if the journal is in need, they were picking up articles really quickly, and especially many of them were for free. So that was the COVID-19 situation. So let's see further.
Oh wow, you made the most out of it.
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Oh. So before doing all of this, did you need any ethical approval?
So no, that's the basic answer. No. We need ethics approval when we are using animal models or human subjects. So in a systematic review, we are not having any direct contact with human subjects. We are using already published work, and those work that have been published, all of that, be it case reports, be it RCTs, or whatever kind of research that's already been published, they would have taken consents, they would have taken ethical approvals already. So since there is no direct interaction between the researchers and human subjects, no, an ethical approval is not needed.
Oh wow. And for the systematic review, do you have to reach out to individual authors of whatever studies that you include?
That's again again a good question. So that depends on you. Now, many times papers that have been published are really, really good in quality. They include everything that you want. So if, again, going back to the same analogy of corticosteroids and COVID-19, if I want certain data on, let's say, hospital stay and mortality rate, if it's already available in the paper, in the data, if I can extract things and I wouldn't need to reach out to the authors. But sometimes you don't have all the data available in the manuscripts, in the published papers. Sometimes you want extra information. That time you could reach out to authors. You don't need to reach out to authors of every record that you include. Only the ones that that you feel you have less information on, or maybe you can't seem to interpret something. So then you can reach out to authors. There's always a corresponding address where you can. So yeah.
Okay. So what would be your message to all the students or young graduates who are starting their research journey?
Sure. Okay, great. I would definitely say that every student, not only medical student, I would say every student should know how to do a literature review at least, because that's what gives you an insight into what the available material is. The latest research is in your field. So I would say everyone should know how should I go and find records on this? How should I go and read them? And how can I form my own summary? Everyone should know. Even people who do original research have to do a literature review for writing their manuscript, for drafting the manuscript. So everyone should. So, and medical students, I would definitely say if you're just starting, start by doing literature reviews, start by understanding that basic part of research. It's very helpful, and as you can see, it is relatively easy to do, especially with the lockdown and everything. You can reach out to a lot of people. You can do everything online. You sort of don't need to meet in person or face to face. You don't need an IRB permission, so that is deleted. And it just gives you a lot of insight. It just increases your knowledge on what's available on so deeply. So I would definitely recommend everyone to at least learn how to do literature reviews and then proceed. So that's
awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Ishita. Today, the insights you shared would definitely be helpful to a lot of students out there, because
and thank you for having me.
Amazing.